Suplifters. So today I want to teach you how to squat. The squat, I believe, is the most complicated exercise of the big three, in the sense that there are a lot of mobility requirements, a lot of differences between body shape of different people, and in general there are a lot of different things that you need to keep in mind while you are squatting. And I want to approach this from a different point of view from the majority of people, because the majority of people start by telling you how to pick up the bar, low versus high bar. However, I want to talk about the human body as the first and most important thing, and about mobility. When we squat, there are three joints which are gonna move: ankles, knees and hips, because this is what a squat is gonna look like, okay? So if you do understand this, we do understand that the knee is gonna flex, since the squat is categorized as a knee flexion, okay? So when you see a power lifter squat like this, is that really a squat? Really, is it? For the rules, it is, but for hypertrophy and bodybuilding, it doesn't really make too much sense. Because there is a minimal amount of knee flexion, because we are much more hinging than doing a knee flexion. On the contrary, this looks much more like a squat, because as you can see, there is a higher degree of knee flexion. So why am I big on the knee flexion thing? Because the more the knee is flexed, the more the quadricep is gonna activate. There are people like Doug Brignall who talk a lot about how cis squats are so good, which are basically this type of exercise in which you go down and then you push up. I personally really hate them and dislike them. I don't think they are a good tool to use, and they put a lot of pressure on the knees, which is kind of ironic because people talk about how how leg extension and deep squats put too much pressure on the knees, but not the sissy squats, which do a lot more. However, understanding that the more knee flexion there is and the more the knee travels past my toes, the more the quad is gonna get activated. And we do squat mainly for that, because if you think about it, the hamstrings and the glutes are still gonna be activated when we deadlift, when we do good mornings, Romanian deadlifts and so on, every type of hip hinge movement. So I believe that if you are a bodybuilder and you wanna squat, you should do it with the purpose in your head to develop your quadricep. So squatting like this is quote-unquote unacceptable. You can do it, but I personally believe that it won't give you the best results for your quads. So why did I talk about this? Because since there are three joints which are gonna flex, every single one of them must be mobile, and every single one of them needs to be mobile in relation with the length of the segment in which it is attached to. Now, what does this mean? This means that my thighs, which is an example, so in general my femur, is extremely long compared to the rest of my body. So this means that if you look at me from the side, when I go down, if I don't have a lot of forward knee travel, okay, so if I squat like this, you can see that my torso can stay quite upright. However, if I cannot have that, look at what I have to do to compensate. I have to basically open up my stance a lot more, and in this way I can kind of compensate, okay? In this way I still have a decent amount of knee flexion, and I can keep my back decently upright. However, if I had short femurs, and you think about it and you try to visualize it, you understand that I will need way less amount of knee flexion for me to basically get down into this position. So the length of your femur compared to the one of your torso is gonna be an important thing to understand and estimate, because if your torso is decently long and it is proportionate, you can actually keep a decently upright position, because the longer your torso is, basically the less you need to lean forward, and the shorter you are, the more you need to lean forward. But why do we need to lean forward? Because once we have our bar on the back of our shoulders, the bar should be in a direct line with the middle of our foot. So if we now understand this concept, which is that there should be a straight line between the middle of our foot and our bar, we understand that once I squat down, let's remember to keep in mind this kind of bar. For me to have this type of position, I need to have a certain degree of flexibility, because right now I am not hitting the depth, because I don't have enough dorsiflexion. However, I can hit depth if I round more forward. But if I round more forward, there is more emphasis on my lower back. So, how do we basically improve our range of motion given the circumstances? Number one, try to understand whether you have long or short femurs. Try to see yourself when you squat. See the position that you get into. Some people, like me, need to lean forward more. So it's really important to have a big ass core and really nice back muscles that can keep up with the weight. Some other people don't. Usually Olympic lifters, if you see them, they have extremely short femurs. And you can see that they basically squat upright. They are like an elevator. They basically do this and they are squatting, and it's quite crazy to see. But I'm gonna talk that about later. So I was saying, how do we cheer out this thing? Well, number one, we can basically enlarge our stance, which is what I talked about before, which is a strategy, and that works because if you think about it, the closer we are, the more knee travel we need, and the wider we are, the less knee travel we need, because our femur isn't only moving in one direction, but it's quote-unquote moving in a diagonal direction. If you understand the logic, once I go down here, my femur isn't just, how do I explain? Basically, it's going in a diagonal fashion instead of a forward fashion, okay? In that way, the length is quote-unquote reduced. So the straight and diagonal lines that we can see are basically their femurs. Ideally, I would have drawn all of the femurs of the right length, but I cannot do it. However, understand that if the femurs are put in a perfectly forward fashion, they will result longer than if they were put in a more diagonal fashion. So the more you open up your stance, the shorter your femur will look like from the side. And that is also the principle of the sumo deadlift. So we do want to have an open position in order to reduce the length of the femur, but we don't want to really open up too much, otherwise it's gonna look like a deadlift and you aren't squatting. Because instead of staying like this and having this length, if I do something like this, the length is slightly slower. So this is a strategy that we can imply. Another one is having a heel elevated shoes, just like mine. Mine are quote-unquote custom designed, meaning that I have a block of wood inside of 2 centimeters, which allow me to have more knee flexion, because my knee flexion personally is complete garbage. Look at this. This is the best that I can do, okay? I'm gonna show you how I squat without these shoes, and you will understand why my body proportions and my lack of dorsiflexion basically makes it impossible for me to squat decently. This is how I would squat if I had nothing, okay? I will probably use a low bar setup, of which we're gonna talk about, and an extra wide stance. And I'm not even sure that I'm actually hitting depth. But basically, I have 2 things that are against me, which is the length of my femur and my inability of dorsiflex. So I need to have this extra wide stance. However, when you squat like that, the quadricep is almost, I don't want to say inactive, but it's not activated in a decently fashion for us to actually say, okay, we're squatting and we're gonna get more quad activation. Another thing that we can do in order to keep the balance is choosing between low and high bar, which refers to the position of the bar on our back. The high bar position basically says that the bar should stay on the top of our traps, while the low bar says it should stay over our rear delts. So just to give you an idea, this is high bar. Okay? This is low bar. And the low bar by definition basically allows and makes us basically simply put our torso in a less upright position. However, it allows us to keep our body stable and have our bar over the middle of the foot. Because if we understand what we talked about before, if my bar is higher on my neck and I am basically leaned over, the bar wants me to basically fall forward. However, if I keep it slightly more on my back, I can keep this position better. So, how would you choose between low and high bar? It depends on how you feel about them. Some people say that low bar is better for competition because you can kinda good morning and basically hip hinge the weight more, and usually hip hinge is stronger than the knee flexion movements. Low bar, that is for low bar. High bar, however, basically will ask you to have more knee forward travel because we're gonna stay more upright since the weight is gonna stay on top of our shoulders and we don't wanna lean a lot, otherwise the bar tends to basically move towards your head and basically makes you fall forward. Instead, the low bar keeps you more balanced and straight. For instance, I have to use a low bar position simply because of how I'm built. My torso isn't long enough compared to my femurs in order to allow me to have a decently upright position, okay? My torso is too short and my femurs actually are too long. That is the main problem for me to actually squat high bar and have a decent position. Because the high bar position asks for me to have a more upright torso, and if I stay upright, I will tend to fall backwards because I can't really keep the barbell in line with my feet. So I will need to basically lean for a little bit more forward, and again we fall back into the same circle jerk. So I need to keep forward, so I need to basically bring the bar backwards, or I need more knee dorsiflexion, so more knee over the toes. Okay, this is basically the premise. I hope I have been decently clear. It's kind of hard for me to basically talk about this stuff because the concepts are decently clear in my head, but I still struggle to talk about it. However, trust me, it will be way more clear when I will talk to you about these examples at the end of my video, in which we will see some other people squat, and I will talk and we'll see if they are long or short femurs, long or short torso, good or bad dorsiflexion. So now let's talk about the squat for real. As I said, when we approach the bar, there are two bar positions, low and high bar, which I already briefly talked about them. So I don't really feel like I need to basically say more stuff about that because there really isn't much. What is important, however, is to understand that you need to create a shelf. What does it mean? I'm gonna put you a picture of Xiaolung because he creates an amazing shelf for the bar to stay on. Basically, it means to compress your upper back muscles in order to create a shelf over which your bar is gonna rest. Having everything flexed and tight is gonna allow us to generate more power and avoid any type of leaks of the power that we're trying to generate. So how do we do that? I'm gonna remove my shirt to show you my back. Basically, if we go for the high bar and we go under it, we're not gonna stay relaxed, okay? We're gonna pack everything, and you can see how the bar is basically resting on the top of my traps. If I don't, it's gonna rest on my spine and I can feel it. It's uncomfortable and you're gonna have some trouble sleeping because there's gonna be an hematoma after you squat a decent amount of weight. So we wanna keep this up. You can see how the bar is moving. We wanna keep this position throughout the whole duration, okay? You will see from the picture of Lou again that it will be even clearer since I don't have traps as big as that dude. So let's put it down. The same thing stands for the low bar position, okay? So we still want to have everything compact in order to have our rear delts flexed, okay? And this is a shelf that we want to keep basically compact throughout the whole movement. I know it can be hard to hold it for a lot of reps. If you see power lifters, they usually do one big breath and they keep everything in. Do not exhale just like I did. Keep everything in, they go down, they go up, and then they move up. But you can clearly see how the bar goes it does this movement and you see that they take the breath and then they hold it down. So the position can be annoying to hold, however it's important that you need to learn how to brace. Now let's talk about bracing. The concept is the same as when we deadlift. So that basically means that we need to take a deep breath into our belly, okay? Do not do a breath on our chest. Look at this, you can do this. And I basically pump up my chest, but I didn't take in a lot of air. However, if I do a diaphragm something breath, I can take in a lot more air, and it's gonna be my lungs that get completely filled up down here. And this will allow us to basically, number one, we're gonna have a lot of air in this area. Number two, we're gonna flex all of the muscles around it. So this creates intra-abdominal pressure, and it's gonna create this ball of air which pushes outside, okay, because we're quote unquote compressing everything with our muscle, because when we flex our body tends to get tighter. However, we have this air that pushes out and the muscles that push in, and this basically allows us to reinforce all of this area, and we need to do it because here the only bones, so the only real structure is the bottom of our back, which we do not want to get overloaded, so the muscles must help.
You can basically understand from this picture how to do a deep diaphragm breath or something like that. Another good analogy is, in order to do the Valsalva maneuver, is think that you're about to get punched in the guts, and your natural reaction will almost always be a Valsalva maneuver.
So I suggest you, if you're using a decent amount of weight, to basically redo this movement at the end of every squat. So we do it, we go down, up, we drop the air, and we redo everything, down, up, and so on. If it is lighter weight, you can do doubles, triples. If it's the empty bar, I personally do not even do it, which is a bad habit, don't get me wrong, I need to get in mind to do it always. But it's not needed because the weight is so light that you can do whatever you want. Let's move on. I'm gonna have a problem showing you some squats because my left shoulder mobility, I believe, is kind of whack and it's worse than the right one. So you will see that I tend to kind of fall on one side, and you will see that I have some hip shift, which means that I prefer going down towards my right hip, which is my stronger side, and push more from that side. But this is all stuff that I'm gonna talk about later. So we're gonna basically constructing our squat from up to bottom, so top to bottom. We talked about our shelf. Let's talk about our grip. You wanna grip the bar normally, just hold it. Do not do this, do not do this. Hold it. Where do we wanna hold it? It depends. Find whatever you find yourself to be more comfortable. Usually if you're extremely big and you lack mobility, you wanna go a bit wider, okay? If you have a decent mobility, you wanna stand like closer. I personally have a closer grip because it also allows me to keep my upper back more packed, because if the wider I grip the bar, the harder I feel like it is for me to keep everything packed. However, if I have everything tight in a small space, it gives me a better idea, a better concept of how I basically conceive my squat, and I feel like it is better for me. So, talked about the upper back, we talked about our core. But we didn't talk about another issue that I also have, guess fucking what, which is called the butt wing, and I'm still trying to resolve it, which is basically this thing here. Basically, once I go down into a squat, my lower back rounds. Now, I didn't already fix it, so I don't have a solution in mind. What I think is that the hip flexors muscle, like the psoas, which originate from the lower part of the spine and attaches to my hips, aren't strong enough that in order to basically allow my back to stand straight. Another problem can be hip mobility, so I need to work on those two things in order to make it go away. What I'm doing right now is using the Zercher squats because they allow me to stay more upright, since the bar is resting in my arms in this position right here, and I can control how deep I want to go. If you do have that, I think it's okay to squat with a lighter weight until you get rid of that, because that can injure you. Honestly, I haven't got injured even when I squatted quote unquote heavier. My squat is terrible. The best squats I've ever did was 80 kilograms, which is like 170 something pounds for reps, so it's kind of bad, but I never got injured in my lower back. However, I know that I have this issue, so I want to solve it because I go a lot up in weight. If I will ever manage to solve it, I will do a video on it. Anyway, that is what I'm doing right now, zercher squats and working on my hip mobility. Again, how much hip mobility do we need? Number one, we need to understand that some people have hips that basically allow them to just have their femurs go forward like this and have no problems. However, some people aren't basically built like this. I don't really have any problems with that because I can go like this and it doesn't really give me any trouble. Some other people, however, will get stuck like here because they literally are bone on bone, they can't move. So what they need to do is basically widen the stance and open up their legs. That way they look more like a frog, okay? So we don't want to overdo it, of course. Just do it slightly and you will see that you will have more basically room just to squat down without any type of pain. Now going again even more down, and also last thing of the hips, since I mentioned it, which is the hip shift, which is the tendency that I have to basically, I don't squat down and up, I squat kind of like this. I tend to go towards the right because that is my stronger hips, my stronger hip and leg in general. What I'm trying to do is using, again, zercher and front squats with a closer stance, because since in the front squat your weight is forward, you are more counterbalanced, so I can keep a more upright torso and a closer stance. And the closer the stance is, so the narrower the stance is, the less option my body has to go towards one side, because I'm basically closing up the path that it can go down to. Because if the path is just like this, my body can just do this. But if the path is this is like this close, it's way harder for my body to do it. So I'm gonna train both legs more equally. Also, I'm trying to think about slightly going towards the left instead of the right when I do my zercher squats. This is pretty much everything I know for the hips. What really helps me is using a lacrosse ball and massage all my adductors. It really allows me to feel more comfortable in the bottom position, as well as massaging my hip flexors. Another thing that I do before my squats are the psoas curl, which is basically doing something with this motion. So I basically use the muscle, which I talked about before, which is the psoas, which allows me to basically raise my leg, which is quote unquote the opposite muscle of what we use when we squat, okay? Because in the squat we go down and the strength, we are generating it when you're going up. However, here we are generating strength when we are raising the leg instead of when we are extending it. And that is why you need to have it strong as well, otherwise you're gonna end up in an imbalance or in injury, overuse injury and stuff like that. So do train that as well. Knees. I personally have injured my left knee a lot of times in my life. So the only thing that happened is that it has a little bit less mobility than my right one. However, right now my squat mobility in general is so bad that it doesn't really count. However, I'm really talking about centimeters, like the difference is something like this. So it's not too crazy. So I cannot really give you any tips for my knees because I've never had any type of problem with them. Ankles. My ankles are complete garbage. I've destroyed them a lot of time, 5 times, 6 times. That is why I have almost none, zero, nada ankle mobility. So I use, as I said, a pair of wood in the back of my shoes. You can use Olympic weightlifter shoes. However, watch how tall the heel is and compare it with how much do you need. Maybe use some books and try to squat keeping your heel on the books to understand how big you need to have this thing. Because if it's more than 2 centimeters, Olympic weightlifter shoes aren't gonna help. Or you can buy a pair of those and then put in another like layer of something in order to keep raising the heel as much as possible. Now, is this gonna injure your knee? Because quote unquote you cannot squat without this stuff. Probably not, because again our knees are made to basically feel a lot of stress, so there really isn't too much problem as long as you're not overdoing it. However, again, you will see there are some people who are basically having their knee almost, traveling like 3 times their feet forward and they're having no trouble, or at least that I know of. But we're gonna see that again in the later part of the video. These are 2 centimeters. I also have a pair of 3 centimeters, which I'm gonna put on at the end of the video just to show you how the squat changes with more or less dorsiflexion. One last thing that I wanna mention, and then I'm gonna talk about how you should move the bar, is a problem that I have, and I am not sure if it's common and how am I gonna resolve it. But basically, if you notice, when I go down, my knee will travel forward, and at a certain point it will be almost pulled backwards. I have very flexible hamstrings, so I believe it is the quadricep. So I'm also trying to massage them, you foam roll them using the lacrosse ball, and I don't really know how much is it actually helping, I'm not going to lie. However, it's the only thing that is really connecting the knee to my hips, because as I said, everything else in theory should be okay. So check this out. My knee goes forward, and the lower I go, now it gets pulled back. And if I try to keep my torso more forward, I believe that it is still gonna happen. I'm gonna have to rewatch the tape. However, that is something that is happening, and I don't know if it is, as I said, because of my quadricep or if it's because of the weight shift, okay? Because the more weight I can hold on top of my knee, the less my ankle is gonna get pushed back because there is weight on it, okay? That is why when I do Bulgarian split squats, it is easier for me to get in a decent dorsiflexion. Now let's talk about the squat finally. We talked about pretty much everything regarding the body. We're gonna now talk about the movement. We already talked about how we wanna grip the bar. You can also use chalk on the back of your upper back and here in order to basically make it less slippery. I don't really have any problem with that because I don't really squat a lot of weight right now. Then again, once I get down here, I want to talk to you about the 3 steps approach. I'm going to use high bar. Actually, I'm going to use low bar. What am I talking about? We basically want to detach and we're going to do 3 steps. Back, large, large, okay? And maybe just slightly shuffle your feet. However, you want to already be in the position that you're comfortable to squat with in this position, okay? So, what is this 3 steps approach? It is something that comes from powerlifting. God damn, my shoulders. So, this 3 steps approach is something that comes from powerlifting. The idea is that you basically unrock the bar, you go 1 step back and lateral, and then you just readjust the last one. And you should be in your position. Learn to do this. Why is this important? Because, as again, I squat baby weight, but once you have a lot of weight on your back, the more energy you spend doing this, then moving your feet and slightly doing all of this bullshit, the more energy you're wasting and the less efficient and strong you're gonna be while you push the weight up. So you wanna basically minimize the energy loss and maximize our efficiency. That is why we need to be as efficient as possible. Practice it. Just do it with your bar. Also, hopefully your squat rack won't be as mine, because as you can see, mine has this bullshit of a bar right under it. So I cannot really get in the correct position, okay? Because what I do is I'm basically stuck here and I need to basically round forward. But in theory, you want to be down here to get the bar up. So I can't really teach you that because it's physically impossible for me to do the correct movement. But basically go nice and down, okay? The movement that you want to be to lift the bar up is going to be minimal. It's going to be a very slight knee extension. Again, slight. You don't want to do like me, that I'm basically doing a good morning. Look at this. I have to do this and then do all of this stuff when I'm unbalanced, when I'm tired, and it sucks. Hopefully one day I will be able to actually change this. So we do this 3-step approach and then we get back. Once we are in the position, we take our nice breath, we prepare our shelf, we have our core nice and braced, and we're gonna begin the descent. And this is a controversial topic because some people say it should be hip first, Some people say it should be knees first. Personally, I think the movement is a knee flexion, so you should start with your knees. Maybe if you're powerlifting and you're using an extreme low bar squat, so again, that weird ass squat that I personally don't even consider a squat, in order to squat more weight, maybe it's gonna be hips first. For bodybuilding, I believe it's gonna be knee first and hips will follow, because it is a knee flexion. Once we do that, we're gonna reach parallel, at least. That will come with time. Again, it depends on your buttwing, it depends on your mobility. I will never be able to go completely ass to grass, so basically putting my ass on my lower part of the foot, because my femur is so long that I would almost really touch the ground. And you understand that if I were to be in such a position, I would need such a long knee forward, like knee travel over the toes, that it will be almost impossible for me to achieve. So again, not everybody is Clarence Kennedy, not everybody is Lu Xiaojun, but not everybody is me, okay? So you're probably gonna be a bit luckier than me, most likely, because I'm quite unlucky regarding the squats. I am luckier for the bench, I have shorter arms. Everybody is gonna have strong and weak points. We're gonna have to make the most of what we have, and this is why I was basically so impromptu to talk about your body anthropometrics, because on the squat it is extremely important to have an understanding of where your body wants you to be and where you can actually put your body in the position to squat, because my squat wants me to move in a certain way, my body wants me to move in a certain way, I want to move in another way. We gotta find a happy in between my mobility, what my body allows me to do, what my anatomy allows me to do, and what I want to do. So that being said, you're gonna probably fall somewhere in between, but again, try to have a decent amount of knee forward travel if you care about bodybuilding and having big quads. The main thing for the knee travel is, of course, as I said, dorsiflexion, so put stuff under your heels. Possibly it's gonna be something hard, just like a piece of wood. Do not use the tatami blocks just like I did, because you're gonna be unstable, you're gonna feel shaky. Right now, in my example, we are at the bottom of the squat, and now there is another thing that we must avoid and dodge, which is the so-called good morning squat. What is the good morning squat? Basically, your legs are too weak, so you rely more on your glutes and your hamstring, and you do a good morning. What is a good morning? This is a good morning. It is an exercise which you can travel. I've never did it, so it's gonna be a first time, but basically it's this. Okay, so it looks like a Romanian deadlift, and the good morning squat is something like this. Okay, did you see the movement? Basically the ass comes up first and then it extends the torso. And what does that do? It basically allows you to use more of your glutes, which is one of the strongest muscles in the body, and your hamstrings. So it's more of a quote-unquote pull, because it resembles more of a deadlift, okay? Because we reach this position. Think about it. I have my bar here and it's almost deadlift. If I have it here, it's a squat morning. So don't do this. Not that it's gonna get you injured, unless you are kind of weak and you're rounding your back, or everything that basically stands for the deadlift also stands for a good morning almost. So understand that if you find yourself in this position, you are not training your legs, but as long as you keep your back nice and stable and everything is tight, you're not gonna injure yourself. Just know that you should not squat anymore, because you either kind of misgrooved it, or you did it not on purpose, but you lost focus or whatever, or you are too tired. And most likely it's gonna be that you're gonna be too tired. Once you're too tired, you need to stop squatting or use less weight or do anything else. But basically, if you start squat morning, maybe try another rep. If you squat morning again, call it quit, because it's really easy to cheat with that. As I said, usually the deadlift is much stronger for the majority of people. Like I said, I deadlift, and it's not much, I know, 110 kilograms for reps, and right now I'm front squatting 60 kilograms for a rep, which is almost just half the weight. So it's gonna be easier to just good morning get up, but you should not do it, because again, you are in a compromised position. You should keep everything braced, but you are focusing on your legs and yada yada. That is not what we're training for. That is pretty easy. So once we avoid this and we understand how we should push, the movement is gonna end. I don't really feel like there is much more that you can actually fail or do wrong after you make sure that you're not squat morning in it, okay? Another thing that you need to make sure to do is keeping everything tight. Again, that is extremely important when you're squatting. So don't hold the shelf up, then go down and kind of relax the upper back and come up. Keep everything as compact as possible. Otherwise, you're gonna have energy leaks. So you're gonna lose tension, you're gonna lose strength. Keep everything as tight as you can and you're gonna have a good squat. Now, I'm gonna show you a couple of squats. My technique is not perfect, I have butt wink and so on. However, I'm gonna do them firstly with the 2 centimeters heel and then with the 3 centimeters heel, and you will see how the movement changes. And I'm gonna do them from here and from the side, and then that is it. I'm gonna talk about some other people squatting. So let's go. I grab and make sure, actually, I'm gonna warm up for a second. I'm gonna cut this part, but I'm gonna just warm up for a second just to avoid having the bar falling on one side. Okay, it was just for my shoulders. 2 centimeters, then 3. I'm gonna change camera angle, 2 centimeters, then 3. So let's go. Also, I'm gonna do them one high bar. Maybe I'm just gonna do everything low bar. I gotta get used to use that. So I'm gonna do everything low bar. Another thing that I thought about is how you should re-rack the weight. Again, I cannot do it because of this stupid ass bar, but basically, once you have your bar on your back, do not do something like this, okay? Just keep walking until you will hit, okay? You will hit the rack, and when you're there, you will just drop the weight. I cannot do it again because this thing sucks. I really hope that I can get a new one sooner or later, although I don't really have much money at the moment, so it's gonna be kind of hard. Anyway, this was low bar with low heels. I'm gonna swap the heels and do it again. Okay, now you can already see how much my feet is getting out of my shoe, because the 3 centimeters are a lot. Nice. So, low bar. Okay, that was it. I feel kind of weird squatting with the shoes like that. I feel like my knees aren't as stable. It's a weirder sensation, so you're gonna have to get used to that. So let me put in here, so this should be okay. There we go. I'm gonna do 3 centimeters first, since doesn't make sense to swap everything again. So let's get under. It actually felt quite good. Not gonna lie. Felt really nice. There. Oh, lost balance. Okay. So now I'm gonna talk about all of those people that I talked about, plus a couple of more examples. I'm gonna leave all of their names on screen if you wanna check them out. Follow them, they're all athletes. Some are netty, some aren't, but I'm just using them for the sake of an example. So the first athlete that I want to talk about is Giulia Imperio, which is a girl of the Italian weightlifting team. She, I think, competes in the 49 or 47 kilograms category. I believe 49. So let's see. Let's start from this back squat, okay? So I'm gonna show you how does she do it. As you can see, she has a very nice depth. She uses a high bar position. And why did I want to talk about her? Number one, because she has a short torso and a decently long femur. So how is she able to squat to depth? Number one, she has very loose hips. And number two, she has an extremely nice dorsiflexion. Let's look at her bottom position. Look at this. Her knee is almost a full feet over her foot. So this means that she has an amazing ankle flexibility, as well as having a very good amount of depth that she can hit. Also having a short tibia, because I believe that her tibia is kind of shorter than her femur. It's easier for her to kind of reach like basically the lowest position while she squats. And again, you can see that she's very powerful from the bottom. She's extremely stable. You can see that her feet are planted on the ground. She has perfect balance, and that's really, yeah, there you go. She's kind of lost the balance. However, you can see that for the majority of the reps, she's extremely stable. You can see that in the last one, she kind of lost balance on the back of her feet, but it's just because she was basically almost too powerful, you know. When she came up, she was too springy and she kind of raised her heel. So this was the first video of Giulia. Okay, this is her again. She's gonna snatch, and I wanna watch the bottom position. Check this out. Look at this bottom position. That is completely crazy. Now I'm absolutely sure 100% that her knee is at least 1 feet over her normal feet. She has an amazing dorsiflexion, as well as an amazing ability to hold the weight in that position, of course, but that, you know, is something common for all of the weightlifters. However, look at that bottom position. Look at how much her ankle is flexed forward. Let's look at the other snatches. Look at how consistent she is when she starts. She shuffles her feet, she goes up, boom, and she gets to that really deep position. You can almost see that her pelvic almost stands between her ankles. It's really something freaky to see. Look at that. And then she comes up. So again, her let's say secret is having amazing dorsiflexion. Let's move on. Let us proceed in the direction of forward. This is a clean and jerk. And I always wanted to show it just because of the clean portion. We don't really care about the jerk. So basically when she bounces back, you can see that she pulls, she does the second pull, and she goes right under the bar. And again, while she's absorbing all of that weight, you can see how much her knee is traveling forward. And that is really what allows her to hold these positions so well. Let's move on. we have her again. This is another clean and jerk, but it's kind of lighter, so you can see how much she kind of springs from the bottom. However, I wanted to talk about this front squat. Check this out. She goes down, and look at that. Look at how much her knee travels forward. I wanna try to pause at the bottom position. There we go. Look at that. Look at that. Like, I believe that the angle is probably lower than 45 degrees between the ground and her knee. It's really, really amazing. That is one of her best attributes, you know. The Olympic weightlifters really need to have all of these attributes, both physical and mobility wise, in order to get to these really, really deep positions. Then again, this is another front squat, even heavier weight. She goes down. Look at that. Look at that. In fact, she has amazingly big quads because she squats and she has that kind of dorsiflexion. And she's definitely, I believe, quad dominant. Of course, her glutes must be extremely strong, but I believe that her quads are probably stronger than her hamstrings. Again, let's move on. Now let's see again. We have her again in a couple of more videos. And I believe there was one in particular that I wanted to show you. Okay, look at the position that she reaches there. That depth is crazy, man. Look at this. Look at this. Her hips are almost between her ankles. That deep of a position, like, for me, it's impossible to achieve, because you also, I mean, I didn't really talk about it, but you also need to have quite a decent like knee mobility, because her knees are completely folded, you know. They're almost overly folded in the sense that her hips are between her ankles. So that is also another attribute that we can talk about while we squat. Let's move on. I remember there was some other stuff interesting to see. Okay, yeah, again, yeah, she's amazing, I know. Okay, there it is. These are some front squats from the front point of view, and you know, it's 90, so it's kind of light for her. Previously we saw her lift 120, I believe. Yeah, now it's 100. You can see she's amazing. There we go. Look at his femurs. They are extremely short, and of course he has amazing mobility. I'm not gonna take anything away from him, don't get me wrong. However, he has amazing like proportions for squatting, because I believe that his tibia and his femurs are almost the same length. Maybe the tibias are actually even longer than his femurs, I'm not sure. And his torso is definitely longer. I mean, if we cannot take a couple of measures, I believe that his torso is almost as long as his legs. Oh my god, Jesus Christ. His torso is as long as his legs. Okay, there we go. And you're gonna see how upright he stands when he squats. Look at this. As I said in the video, it's like an elevator. He just goes up and down. He doesn't do anything else. And it's really freaky to see. But he can do it because of his proportions. He does what it's called a squat jerk, okay? So after he cleans the weight, he doesn't do the split in order to keep the weight up. He simply squats it up, because that's what feels more comfortable to him. This was like 270 kilograms. It's absolutely nutty. Look at this. He simply goes down. Also, look at how minimal his movement is when he unrocks the weight, you see? Just like I said, he simply does a very slight knee extension. Then he goes down. Of course, he doesn't pause, but I mean, who's gonna pause to some 270 kilogram squat? And simply look at his position. I mean, look at this position. Right here is slightly above parallel, but you can understand how easy it is for him to go below that. Because, I mean, he's literally built for this. He's built different. Look at how long his torso is. It's almost comical, you know? So of course it's really easy for him to keep the barbell right in the middle of the foot because of his body proportions. He comes up, and there he goes. I need some help, because That is some. Okay, then we have the man, the myth, the legend, Clarence Kennedy. Again, look at how this guy is built. Look at how short his femurs are compared to his torso. And again, guess what? He has amazing mobility. Look at him going down. Okay, he braces, gets ready, and boom. Look at how down he goes. And again, look at how upright he is. He probably has slightly less a different position than Lou, I believe, because I feel like Lou actually had his knees more forward, and also his toes were pointing more forward. Clarence kinda gets in this, I don't like to say it, but in this kind of shape, like frog position, right, with its feet slightly pointed outwards. However, he also has amazing mobility, he's extremely strong, and look at how he gets up from the hole. And how does he do it? So number one, he has amazing proportions in order to squat, and he has a very good dorsiflexion as well as hip mobility. But the most important thing is he has short femurs. So look at him going up, and that is the hardest part, and he comes up. Also, this is a really interesting stuff that you can see is how defined his quads are at the bottom position. And I firmly believe that is because this guy always squats ass to grass. And that is why hitting a very nice depth is important for bodybuilding, because I firmly believe that the deeper you go, the more you can actually kind of build this part of your quads, so like the attachment to the knee, okay? So the deeper you go, the more that part is gonna get recruited, in my opinion. Yeah, and then he drops it, okay, of course he's a beast. Look at him from the side, this is gonna be also interesting. He's something else to see, okay? Because number one, you can see how his knees almost stays there, and then he kinda moves his torso forward, and that allows him to basically completely squish his whole body and hit the bottom position, and then he bounces back from the hole. And you can see that that is also an easy part, okay? Because the harder part of the lift isn't the hole. You can see how much strength he has down of the hole. And also, look at how much he's bracing, and look at how he's holding the rep. Right now, this is the classic example in which the butt will come up, and then you would good morning the weight. However, he stands in it, and he grinds it, and he keeps the correct position, and then he, of course, gets the fuck out of there. But that is really important to see. Because usually this is where where people fall over and have their butt come up. So this is a very good example of what you should try to do. And it's gonna be hard, it's gonna feel like hell. He comes up, there he goes, and then he drops it. Now have David Lade, the golden goose of Gymshark, the prettiest guy, the aesthetic king. And look at this dude. Again, if we look at him, he has a, I believe that this angle doesn't really give him justice, and I think his pants are put slightly up. However, he has extremely long legs, but I believe that his torso is at least normal size. He doesn't have a short torso, in my opinion. So how does he do that? He has a decently wide stance, and he has amazing knee mobility and ankle mobility. Look at how much that is going forward. Look at how long his femur are. He's a very tall guy, by the way, and look at how vertical he manages to stay. This is why I think that he has a decently long torso, because if he had a shorter torso, he would need to lean more forward. However, otherwise it wouldn't really make sense of how he would be able to actually keep the barbell right in the middle of his foot. If you feel me, like, imagine that he will be like a head shorter, okay? If he had a shorter torso, you will need to lean more forward. However, he's decently vertical, and that is because he has a decently long torso. However, he needs this extremely deep position at the bottom with the ankles extremely flexed. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to squat like this. Also, he's been injured a lot of time. He's not natural, by the way. Just throwing it out there. However, you can still use him as like a specimen in order to study the squat position. And you can see how deep he needs to go. His technique is really cleaning up because he deadlifted, and I believe also squatted with kind of bad technique when he was younger, which is a pity, because it's really sad to see people kind of get ruined by stupid ego lifting. So this is another point of view, which is pretty interesting to see. You can see how he unrocks, 1, 2, 3, gets ready. he's not extremely wide, you know, but he has his toes pointing outwards in order to basically clear the way for his hips. So I believe that the wider you go, the less hip mobility you need, and the narrower you are, and if you point your toes outwards, you're gonna still need quite a good ankle mobility in order to make way for your body to stay in the middle of that. So anyway, he's showing very good technique. I don't really need to show you everything, but there was something else. Okay, look at him from the back. You can see that he has a very slight hip shift. He also tends to go towards the right, just like me. And you can also see that his foot positioning right now isn't the best. And also that is why I believe that he's also tending to go to the right. Because as you can see, the right feet is slightly in a more forward position than the left one, and is slightly more angled outwards. Anyway, he hits depth every single time, and he's doing it quite well. And in this clip, I don't want to look at David. I want to look at the girl on his left side. Look at her. Look at what she's doing. You can see that at the top of the movement, she's squeezing her glutes. Don't do this. What are you doing? What's the point? When you're coming up and you're opening your hips up, your ass is automatically gonna do it. You don't need to squeeze it at the top like this. Also, you can see that she isn't hitting depth. But, wait, oh, I'm sorry. I was saying she isn't really hitting depth, okay? Because she's way above parallel, okay? We should look at the top of the knee, which should be at the same level as the hip crease. Let's look at David for a second. Oh, I'm sorry. I was saying let's look at David. You can see that top of the knee higher than the hip crease, so that's depth. She isn't hitting it, but can she? She clearly can. She clearly can. Because number one, like her bar is perfectly over her feet, her knee is traveling forward, and her back isn't having any type of buttwing. So what would I suggest her to do if she feels like she can't really go forward? I will tell her to open up her feet a little bit more. Why? Because she probably feels kind of bone on bone on her hip. Again, just like David, if she opened up her feet a little bit more, she would probably be able to hit depth very comfortably. Again, her back is extremely straight, she's in a perfect position to squat, so she really can go deeper than that for sure. And she needs to stop doing that thing where she squeezes her glutes at the top, it doesn't do anything, it doesn't gain more hypertrophy, and it's just not necessary. Look at this, doesn't make any sense, and you can see how he's not doing it. He comes up and that's done. I mean, that is just natural. I mean, he's flexing his glutes, but that's a natural flexion. You can see that he's not trying to do an air hip thrust. Look at her, she goes extremely deep. You can almost see that her femurs are kind of opening up. Anyway, I ranted enough about all of this stuff. I hope that this kind of made sense. See you guys in the next one.